Broadcasting live from the overgrown farmland on the plain of Innistrad, this is Tap Tap Concede. Welcome everybody to Tap Tap Concede. My name is Graham and joining me is Cameron.
Hi.
And Nelson.
Not a ghost horse.
Not a ghost horse. And today on TTC, we're going to be talking about Innistrad, Midnight Hunt, the first of the Innistrads. The first of this season's Innistrads. Midnight Hunt comes to us now in September. And since we last spoke to you, we've done a pre-release and played some amount of it individually. And so we're going to talk a little bit about it. But first, a reminder, of course, that the show is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Please do check out cardkingdom.com/LRR. That puts our little affiliate code on there, which tells them that we sent you, and we continue to do that because they continue to be a great place to buy your Magic cards. Cards like Innistrad Midnight Hunt. And they have excellent customer service and very, very fast shipping. And if you tell them loading ready run sent me button, please, they will give you a little 1-inch button. Good news, Nelson. They are now completely sold out. They weren't for sale. It's a free thing, but they're out of Lands in Front Party in the Lands in Front Party in the Back.
Oh, it sounds like they were popular. Hopefully we'll be seeing a lot of those out in the wild.
I appreciate all the hard work that all of you have done to buy cards and get lots of copies of those buttons. Now, if you can kindly recycle them safely.
By sending them to our P.O. Box.
Let's just dox Nelly here. Yeah, right.
Cameron Lauder, care of Bionic Trousers Media. I need to spruce up my draft kit.
Start leaving them places where Nelson's likely to be.
Cameron's just going to make a coat out of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a shield of protection from Nelson.
Jangle so much.
I'll just wither in front of him every time we're in the same room.
Anyway, the new button says, "Hello, my name is," my name is sticker. "Hello, my name is Medium Gargadon."
I love it. They're both good jokes, but I don't need you to stop that one.
Fair enough. The show is also brought to you by you and your kind support of our Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. So we did the Innistrad Midnight Hunt PPR the other day. We did 6 rounds of sealed. Everybody got to play 2 games. And how did we enjoy that? Cam, you went 2-0, which I believe was made mention at the time. Hasn't happened to you specifically at a PPR in some time.
Yeah, I'm confident that I've won my matches at a PPR before.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that's happened.
No, it definitely has.
Yeah, my role at the PPR, I feel, has evolved into getting theatrically dumpstered. Whether it's Blake, keeping me twisting for
2
hours.
Yeah.
Or Sydney making me eat meat out of despair, or Wedge calling in the game's designer to Dutch door me in front of thousands of people.
But how did this one go?
Truly, you're doing it for the TV, and we all love that, Cameron.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing I do, it's commit to the bit. Have you won Magic the Gathering? It feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good. I would like to credit Voldaren Stinger, whose name I got wrong at the PPR. I believe I was referring to her as Voldaren Stinger the entire time, which is embarrassing. But Voldaren Stinger is like this, or no, yeah, it's a 1-drop. It's a 1/1 vampire warrior. Voldaren Stinger has first strike as long as it's attacking, and for 2 and a red, gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Turns out a first striker with threat of activation, basically an abyss.
Mm-hmm.
People had to spend removal on this. It's better than it looks.
Yeah, a 1/1 for 1 that people can't readily ignore it's a heck of a card.
Yeah. I also wanted to give a shout out to, where are you? Ardent Elementalist. For 3 and a red, you get a 2/1 human shaman. When Ardent Elementalist enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. It's Archaeomancer in red.
Yeah.
I got absolutely destroyed by that in a sealed deck that we played on LRR MTG yesterday. We're recording this on Friday, September 17th. And my opponent had Light Up the Night, which is the sort of fireball. It's X and a red to deal X damage to any target, and it's X +1 damage if the target is a creature or planeswalker, which is a cool design. And then it has this flashback, which is 3 and a red to pay for the flashback, and then you pay for the X with removing X loyalty counters from among planeswalkers you control. And X can't be 0, so you can't make it 0 and ping off a 1/1 or whatever. So generally speaking, in limited, there's no way for people to be able to actually flash that back, most of the time. because they would need a planeswalker to do it. So it's like, okay, sure. So they cast Light Up the Night and then twice returned it with different copies of Ardent Elementalist. They got to cast that spell 3 times, and we did not win that game.
Yeah, no, it's a good card.
Yeah.
It is a really good card, especially considering it is an X1 that dies to basically everything, can trade up, and like the set is full of reanimation, right?
Yeah.
So you can recur this pretty easily to keep getting Defenestrate over and over again, right? Like you can just cast the same Defenestrate 3 times in a match. Just keep hauling dudes up to the top of the cathedral and kicking them out the window. There's no window there anymore, right? Or you keep having to reinstall a new window first for the theatricality of it.
Good season for the Handweird Glaziers.
Oh yeah. Handwear Princess Auto is just like, just reinstalling windshields day after day.
Also, the Glaziers are going to have a real good season this year. I think they're really well situated with their rookies, the talent they've been developing in the back half of their lineup. The Handweird Glaziers are really.
I think they could at
this
least
is a team to watch.
Yeah, I think they could at least make it to the regional championships.
Also, the coordination that among that team, it's like they have one mind.
Oh, they gotta. Can you imagine people piloting a plane like a sheet of glass around a football field during a game?
I can't.
No, that would be very silly. So what was your PPR deck like, Cameron, in sort of broad strokes?
Aggressive. It basically topped out at 3. I think if you look at my curve, there are 5 cards at 4 and above. Elementalist, Bat Whisperer, who does not have flying. You would be forgiven for looking at Bat Whisperer and thinking, this card flies. Don't even need to read it.
She just talks to the bats.
Yeah, right? She doesn't intrude upon their biome.
No, of course not.
I want to say this isn't even the worst offender for like art plus name equals this should fly in the set in amongst black vampires. This one at least is like sitting on the roof, like
right.
They're just kind of like chilling. They're lounging, talking to this bat. But the art for, let me just find it real quick here. Stromkirk Blood Thief. This is a 3-mana 2/2 vampire rogue who's like jumping off of a building, like she's doing some ballet gymnastics, action movie Black Widow stunt here, where she's about to go for a big dive, and that does not have flying. So yeah, this Innistrad is got a couple of points against them in the whippoorwill category.
You also got to kill that card before it gets out of hand.
Yeah, that's another good card. We didn't see it in action at the PPR, I don't think, but this is a pretty strong limited card too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, like, so far I haven't, like, we need a new phrase for when you're surprised that has reach, but as it turns out, everything has reach because you just didn't read your card and don't realize that it didn't have flying, right? When you don't have flying, everything has reach, is basically what I'm getting at here.
I think it's just the second part of that has reach. That has reach? This doesn't fly?
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like you can say that has reach and your opponent can say no and you can both be right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's like I attack with this thing. They go, okay, I block. And you're like, wait, that has reach? And they're like, no, your creature doesn't fly. Like, oh, what? Whoops. Oh, okay.
Otherwise, yeah, like, okay. So I had Bat Whisperer, Blood Tithe Collector. He was fine, right? 3/4 flying is actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, Blood Tithe Collector is the one with, it's 4 and a black for a 3/4 flying vampire noble. ETB, it's like Spectacle or Bloodthirst or whatever, this sort of vampire ability in the set. If an opponent lost life this turn, each opponent discards a card.
Yes.
That's nice. Yeah. That's cool.
Then I also had a Morkrut Behemoth, 7/6.
Everyone loves more Crut.
Yeah, everyone loves more Crut. Nobody doesn't want more Crut. It's a 7/6 with Menace, and you can either sacrifice a creature or pay 1 and a black when you cast it.
That's a great way to use your Decayed Zombies.
Absolutely. Then at the tippy top of my curve at 6 mana, I had 1 Dreadhound, who is a 6/6 demon dog. When it enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards. When a creature dies or a creature card is put into a graveyard from a library, each opponent loses 1 life.
I love Dreadhound.
Yeah. It did work for me in the games where I didn't just throw it away to an obvious combat trick.
Yeah.
Props to Kathleen.
Spoilers for one of the bonus rounds, which may have already gone up by the time you're hearing this. I'm not entirely sure. But I was playing against Surge, and one of our games I got surged down to 4, but he had like majorly stabilized and was battling back and was putting himself in a pretty damn good position to really turn the game around. And I played Dreadhound, milled 2 creatures, so took him to 2, and then it was a case of like, oh, well, now I just attack with my 2
decayed zombies, right?
Stupid. Well, no, I just had creatures. I was just like, sure. I attack with my stupid creatures. Either you take the damage and die, or you block and kill them, and then creatures die, and you lose life that way. It was it's the Sir Conrad effect of just like, it's gonna get you one way or another.
The pincer maneuver.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 6 mana Blood Artist is still Blood Artist, right? Or because in limited you're usually using combat, it feels a little bit like, well, we have Hellrider at home, you know.
Right. Yeah.
I've only played 1 match on Arena so far, but I finished it with playing a Dreadhound after having played. I drafted a deck with 4 copies of the blue flying bird zombie that also brings a decayed token. I don't know if we saw much of this at the PPR, but Falcon Abomination, 2 generic and a blue for a 2/2 flying zombie bird, and just one of the ETBs you make a decayed zombie. So it's not a 4/4 for 3, but it's a little better than a 2/2 flyer for 3, and I like 2/2 flyers for 3 to begin with. So Dreadhound, one of the ways certainly to push that extra damage through with your decayed zombies.
Yeah, otherwise the deck was just pretty low to the ground and aggressive, and I think I like this archetype, right? I like counting to 20.
Yeah. I love the intro video that we did for the PPR made by Mangled Pixel, where we all had our headstones that talked about how we died, and yours, Cam, was swung for 19.
Whoops.
Yeah, that was good. Everybody came up with their own suggestions for what their headstone should say, and I think you suggested several, but that's the one I picked because it was very clean. It's just like, oh, whoops.
Yeah, miscounted.
Yeah. Well, 1. Oh, okay.
All right. Well, your turn.
Yeah. Nelson, what was your deck like?
If we're allowed to talk about stuff that's going up for bonus rounds. So I managed to put together 2 different decks in my sealed, but the more successful one was green-white. I did build a red-black deck, and I think my favorite card in it was just the Vengeful Strangler, which you also had, I believe, Cameron, or someone else had it between yourself, Wheeler, and Kathleen.
Yes. I have Vengeful Strangler.
Yeah, so I like Vengeful Strangler in the aggressive strategies. I also had this card Necrosynthesis. I'm not sure if anyone else played it, but it's sort of like on my radar as I can't figure out whether this is great or garbage. It's a creature enchantment, an aura that you put on your own creatures for benefit, which often in Magic, those are bad. So that's probably a red flag right there. But it's 1 and a black for an enchantment aura that says enchanted creature has whenever another creature dies, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. But also when an enchanted creature dies, you look at the top X cards of your library where X is its power, put 1 in your hand and the rest in the bottom. And I like, if Unruly Mob is really good, then like being able to get more Unruly Mobs is maybe good. So yeah, I did build that deck, but my much more successful deck revolved around some half decent white and green werewolves and human tokens and some good removal. I had the same combat trick that Kathleen had, +2/+2, and then if you have Coven, you draw a card for 2 mana, Might of the Old Ways, and then I also have 2 copies of the one that likes humans more, Flare of Faith, 1 generic and a white for +2/+2, unless it's a human, in which case +3/+3 and indestructible. So if you have a deck with like Join the Dance and the Cathars that make human tokens when they ETB, these combat tricks are fairly powerful. I also just had like a Candle Trap and Borrowed Time to be able to get through Surge's blockers pretty easily. And then standout creatures in my deck included Bird Admirer. I saw a lot of people playing Bird Admirer. And if you watched the PPR and weren't quite sure what jokes Wheeler was trying to make, we have this Wednesday night stream we've done a few times on CTS. We've played Wingspan. And it's just a lovely time. It's usually Wheeler, myself, Matt, and Ian. And Wingspan is just like this very chill game where we just like hang out and collect birds. And at the end, someone collected bird's the best. But the whole game is very like just a chill vibe. Like it's not an exciting game. And we all just regularly talk about how that's a nice bird every time someone collects a bird. But Bird Admirer is quite a strong card. 3 mana, 1/4 reach, and then has Daybound on the backside. It's just a 3/5 reach. So you've got two great spiders, both a great deal for 3 mana. Also, Dawnheart Mentor was in my green-white deck, and Kathleen played this as well to some success. This is another 3-drop green creature, 2 generic and a green for a 0/4 human warlock that brings a 1/1 white human creature token when ETBs. So again, good with the Flares of Faith I was talking about. And it has Coven for 6 mana, 5 generic and a green. You can activate an ability that says target creature you control gets +3/+3 and trample until end of turn, and only do that if you have 3 different powers.
Yeah, wasn't a fan of that one.
Yeah, having a big expensive mana sink, it doesn't have to be Coven, but any mana sinks you can get, just make your werewolves better, because it means you can still do something on your own turn, like have a spell like ability on your own turn without actually casting a spell. So then your werewolves can flip if it's daytime. But by far the best card in my deck was Brutal Cathar. This is a rare white human, 2 generic and a white for a 2/2 human soldier werewolf. When this enters the battlefield or transforms into Brutal Cathar, exile target creature an opponent controls until this creature leaves the battlefield. Ooh. And it has Daybound. Yeah, so it's like multiple O-rings on one creature. And then the backside is a 3/3 werewolf that's red with First Strike and Nightbound and Ward, pay 3 life. So if they want their stuff back, they have to pay 3 life unless they can kill it on the day side. But, you know, if you've gotten back to the day side, at least you've exiled 2 things. This is quite a strong card for limited.
Yeah, wow.
But Serge and I had a good match. And I think a lot of people were playing there's a mana fixing spell that scries and has flashback. I saw that quite a bit over the course of the BPR. Helps.
Yeah, Path to the Festival.
Yeah, Path to the Festival kind of helps you get back to daytime by giving you more mana so you can cast 2 spells if you need to. Mm-hmm. My impression of Day and Night was that it was generally like, it seemed kind of tricky. Like it was a bit of work. You obviously always can choose to make it daytime by just kind of skipping your turn, but
or nighttime.
Sorry, nighttime. Yeah, you can make it turn into night if it's currently day by just choosing not to play any spells in your own turn. But then, that might cost you too much tempo. Like it might not be worth flipping 1 werewolf if it means you don't get to play another creature. So a lot of turns of the PPR, it seemed like, okay, it's just staying day for a long, long time or staying night. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting.
Yeah. How did you find, going back to the first card you mentioned, how did you find Necrosynthesis? Because I played against it in a sealed deck last night, and it was pretty good.
Okay.
I think, I mean, it was good against me in that instance. My opponent was like already kind of ahead, but I think creatures die a lot in this format. Like Innistrad is deadly.
Right. So it is another thing you can do with your Decayed Zombie tokens, right? And I think generally, like the impression I get is like build a deck that has some way to enjoy these tokens, right? Like you don't just attack with them. But if you don't have the thing yet, if you don't have the like enabler for getting value out of your tokens, just leave them to sit around and wait. And that's totally fine. So this is like one of the things you can top deck is this enchantment, and then you can shove with them all, and then they turn in +1 counters. I didn't get to do that. The game where I played it, I got run over by Surge and my creature died right away. So I got to draw a card and I didn't feel bad about having it in my deck, but I didn't have a moment where it was like, okay, this Necrosynthesis is going to win this game.
That's fair. I mean, I guess at least you have that, right? Like it doesn't actually do anything until another creature dies, but at least if they kill that creature, you do actually get a card. I remembered now why it was so brutal against me, which was that my opponent had that on just some random creature. It had an ETB effect, then became a vanilla creature. It was not relevant. But they also had Jadar, Ghoul Caller of Nephalia. So maybe this was the problem. So it was 1 and a black for a 1/1 human wizard. At the beginning of your end step, if you control no creatures with Decayed, create a 2/2 zombie with Decayed. So every single turn, it was like, all right, I attack you with this Decayed zombie, I block it with my 4/4, and then their creature with Necrosynthesis gets bigger, and at the end of turn, they get another friggin' zombie. So that was an irritating play pattern. And I guess maybe Jadar was the bigger problem than Necrosynthesis.
But again, yeah, Necrosynthesis does synergize stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Jadar is just like, hey, man, what do you want from me? I'm doing my job here.
Yeah.
These ghouls got to get up. Someone's got to wake the dead.
Yeah.
Can we talk for a moment about unnatural growth? I got to watch Ben Wheeler play this card in a draft deck on his stream yesterday. And it's an enchantment for 1 generic and 4 green pips. So that's 1 GG. Oof. And it says... Yeah, 1 GG. Yeah. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. Like it's a global enchant. It's not an aura. It's just every turn, like when you're about to attack, all your creatures get twice as big, which is pretty messed up. He played it and then still the game went on for like 8 more turns. So credit to his opponent. But yeah, I definitely had just seen it on his stream and I was like, wait, what? So I think if you do happen to run into this, good luck. Or draft this if you see it. Like, I can't think of another card that's similar to this. Maybe there's like a Conviction from Scars of Mirrodin that was like a 6-mana white enchantment that gave all your creatures double strike or something when they attack.
It's such a mana cost.
Yeah, isn't that such a mana cost, right?
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, but also, look, all of your creatures are big. Like, it's not exalted. It's not like one creature gets huge like a Paladin class would do. This is just like double all your power and toughnesses. So that's something to do with your Decayed Zombie tokens too.
Yeah. Speaking of things to do with your zombie tokens, have you played against this card, the Meat Hook Massacre?
No, but I watched Wheeler playing out of the PPR.
That swings some windmill haymakers. I don't know how to fight. Look, Meat Hook Massacre is just a beating and a half.
It's like it's a wrath that sticks around and keeps hurting.
Well, it's a very specific. It's a wrath with a very specific set of skills. Right. It's X black for a legendary enchantment. When the Meat Hook Massacre enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X until end of turn. So it's Black Sun Zenith kind of, right? Like you can tailor it a little bit to leave alive what you want to leave alive. But it goes on. Whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain 1 life. So it's a blood artist, kind of. I mean, it's one of the bad blood artists.
Yeah.
Like, it has a very limited effect.
Yeah, you get a point. Like, something happens whenever a creature dies. So it's got that going for it. It's not just a blood artist when your creatures die. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see the R&D notes on this where it was just like, it's still too strong. Make the blood artist more limited. Right? Like,
yeah.
You wrath the board and do 27 to your opponent. We can't have this in a limited environment.
Smart of them to make it legendary.
Yes. Yeah. Landing 2 of these. Could you imagine you're playing Sealed and your opponent resolves their second Meat Hook Massacre?
Ooh.
Meat Hook Massacre 2, Origins. Right? Then Meat Hook Massacre 3D. Meat Hook Massacre 4 in space. Meat Hook Massacres is the 5th installment and is like the reboot.
Yeah.
I'm terrified just talking about it. Yeah.
I had a bone to pick also with Ethan Fleischer, I think, on Twitter, who said that this was a reference to infamous slasher film, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I'm like,
yes, you talked about this.
Yeah. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a body horror film. I mean, like, it can be classified as a slasher film, but I would say it's much more comfortable in body horror.
I think this series became a slasher series, but the original, you're quite right. The original is not a slasher flick. It's also like, I mean, yes, he uses meat hooks, but it's like, it's honestly way more upsetting.
Yeah, agreed. It's a good movie if you're into horror films.
Yeah. I remember watching it and I was expecting like, oh, okay, sure. So it's going to be, like lots of gore and there's the chainsaw, of course. It'll be swinging that around and blood will be flying everywhere. And the first time someone dies in the movie, he opens the door and sees Leatherface, and Leatherface hits him in the temple with a hammer. And then the person just stops being a person. The person just falls to the ground like a sack of potatoes and stops moving. And I was like, holy crap, that's way scarier.
Yeah, exactly. Like, apparently they had a hard time censoring it because there's very little blood.
Huh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Okay, re-railing about magic cards here. Sorry. I'm not a fan of horror movies, and so I'm just going to left turn this whole conversation away from me having nightmares.
Can I actually talk about a card that cares when people die?
Yeah, that's totally fine. But let me first, just at the risk of becoming a meme, and also with the awareness that we haven't gotten to play a lot of Canadian Highlander lately, do you think that the Meat Hook Massacre might have a place in Aristocrats? Like, sincerely? It's just, I like the flexible mana cost.
Yeah. I mean, I've been looking at it and thinking maybe...
It's kind of a weird one, right? Yeah.
Like, it's a blood artist that lives through a lot of things, right? Like, I'm a big fan of the enchantment blood artist from Ikoria.
Okay.
Bastion of Remembrance.
Bastion of Remembrance, yeah, the 3-mana one, yeah. Right.
Just because it's a little resilient to removal, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Blood artists are usually like, their life expectancy is basically indistinguishable from 0.
Yeah.
So any kind of like survivability you can have on these effects is really nice. Yeah.
So maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
It counts the correct deaths, right? Like, it's when creatures you control die that it pings your opponent. And the life gain is nice when it happens, but is not as important in the same way.
Yeah, but even if you disregard gaining life, it still can do two things that you want, right? It can kill your opponent and it can kill some of their creatures, which you sometimes need to do.
Yes. So, I mean, maybe, right? Like even flopping this for black could be good enough.
Just as a spare, just an extra blood artist that doesn't get killed by your opponent's lightning bolts.
Yeah. That being said, Bastion of Remembrance came with the body, and I am really trying to keep a low number on the number of spells in my Highlander deck that cannot be fed to a Falconwrath Aristocrat.
Right. That's fair.
So a limited number of slots, but I think this might be worth putting in one of them.
Cool.
So yeah, I think it's worth sleeving up and testing.
All right, Graham, which death trigger card do you want to talk about next?
Morbid Opportunist, which I have seen punch tremendously above their weight. So it's 2 and a black for a 1/3 human rogue. Whenever one or more other creatures die, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Adam played this against me at the PPR, and I want to say drew, 7 cards over the course of the game. I've seen it I was watching, I think, Kenji Numa the Nami stream earlier, and his opponent was just like drawing a bajillion cards. If you don't answer it, things die all the time in limited in general, but in this format in particular. And this thing just draws lots of cards.
Yeah. Usually you pay life for this effect.
Yeah, usually it costs you 1 life every time you would draw one. But in this case, nope.
And usually you can only draw one on your own turn. This one can draw you 2 extra cards every turn cycle, right?
Yeah. And it's not only your creatures, it can be any creatures. So it's like any removal spell, it just it replaces itself. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think this definitely gets into Gladiator Aristocrats.
Word.
That would be, yeah.
Seems like a strong one.
So yeah, I was pretty impressed by that. I ended up in black-white at the PPR. We divided into groups of 3 rather, to minimize sort of just cross exposure. And it turns out that the one that I was in, myself, Ben, and Adam, that trio, we were each combination of Mardu. So I was playing black-white, Ben was playing white-red, and Adam was playing red-black. And it was all quite scary and aggressive. The afternoon squad, you actually had someone playing blue, right?
Ben Wheeler,
and like a touch of green,
had a touch of blue due to a clerical error, I believe.
He played a bounce spell. He played Revenge of the Drowned.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was essentially that he typoed in the Slack thread, and people were so relieved that somebody was playing blue that he felt obligated.
No, he boarded in. He had Triskaidekaphile too. That's what it was. He was playing blue on purpose for Triskaidekaphile, and he even in some matches boarded into a second island. Like, not every time, but I think when he was playing against Kathleen, it kind of made more sense for him to have 2 islands because that match was a bit grindier.
Yeah. So activating Triskaidekaphile twice, in a turn could be spicy.
I think the blue cards are decent in this format, though. Like, we maybe just didn't open a ton of good ones. Yeah.
I agree. This is definitely not a commentary on what we think of blue in the set. There's some very good cards. I think blue is actually going to be very good in the set.
It's just much easier to look at like a sealed pool and go, well, I have 3 burn spells and 2 Defenestrate.
Yep.
Yes, I'm in red-black.
Yep. I also want to mention Sunset Revelry, which I boarded in because originally I was running No Way Out, which is the mind rot where you get a decayed zombie, and I realized making my opponents discard stuff is actually only maybe only medium, and so I boarded in Sunset Revelry, which is 1 and a white sorcery. If an opponent has more life than you, you gain 4 life. If an opponent has more creatures than you get 2 1/1 human tokens. If an opponent has more cards in hand than you, draw a card. And twice I screwed up my sequencing on this, and
oh no.
I did the thing where you plan your turn, right? I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and then that's going to happen. Okay, great. So first of all, let's go to attacks, swing in. And so twice I messed it up that I was like, okay, my opponent has more life than me. So when I cast this, I will gain 4 life. Cool. Make some attacks, thereby putting their life to lower than mine, and then going, oh, wait, now this doesn't do what I wanted it to do.
Harsh.
Yeah.
Check your sequencing, kids.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Speaking of being there in some way, I don't think I played Vampire Socialite correctly once, or even for any advantage once.
Vampire Socialite's a bit of a puzzle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, not really. I think I was just kind of flustered and sleepy. I don't know. I have no excuse for my behavior with this card.
Which one's Vampire Socialite?
For red black, you get a Vampire Noble who is a 2/2 with Menace. She also has, when Vampire Socialite enters the battlefield, if an opponent lost life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on each other vampire you control. As long as an opponent lost life this turn, each other vampire you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So I think like my signature play with this was playing a vampire with haste, attacking with it dying, and then second main phase playing Vampire Socialite, right? Like I feel that is just the correct sequencing with this card. Yeah, I don't know what I was doing, but it's a good card with solid payoffs that I completely failed to exploit multiple times.
Let's talk a little bit, speaking of the vampire cards, about the one that hits your opponent for free. Neonate's Rush. This is 2 generic and a red for an instant, but it costs 1 generic less if you control a vampire, and it deals 1 damage to target creature and 1 damage to its controller, and then draws you a card. So when you're on the back foot with the red black vampires deck, it can seem kind of hopeless because all your cards want your opponent to have lost life in order to get, your mana's worth out of your spells. But this one lets you do it even if you can't get through their wall of blockers. And we saw it being used to some good effect. There's not like a ton of X1s. I wouldn't say the format's full of X1s, but it can occasionally kill a creature. Like a vampire stinger.
Yeah.
Voldaren Stinger, it can take that one out. Yeah. Or there's some spirit tokens and bird tokens.
It can also finish off a wounded creature.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of casting spells and dealing damage, Adam had Geist Flame Reservoir in his pool, and that did some work. So it's 2 and a red for an artifact, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you put a charge counter on it. For 1 and a red and tap, remove any number of charge counters from Geist Flame Reservoir. It deals that much damage to any target.
Oh, nice.
Also, 1 and a red and tap, exile the top card of your library, and you can play that card this turn. So the any target, I mean, I lost a game to it, right? Like I think he actually had missed lethal the turn prior, not realizing that it can go to the face, because it just, it builds up charge counters and then you can just blow your opponent out of the water. But also it's really useful for just sort of like, okay, I do, I gonna cast a removal spell on that thing and then tap my reservoir and ping the other creature. And it's, there's a lot of interesting timing and play patterns with when you can really get them with Geist Flame Reservoir.
Yeah, it's nice that it says any number of charge counters. You don't have to take all the charge counters off. Mm-hmm. So if you just need to, kill a 2/2 so that the race is still good, you can. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the Daybound Nightbound change insofar as creatures with Daybound and Nightbound entering on their Nightbound side if it's night already.
You like that?
Yeah, I do, because I think it's an interesting, it's like, well, it's not really worth it for me to change it back to day right now. Like, I could be suboptimal in my play to cast this spell to turn it back into daytime, but I'm not really worried about that unless I think my opponent has a werewolf and then they can get advantage by getting the big scary version, sort of, for free, unquote, now. And then that would be bad, right? So I just think it's interesting, right? It's more decisions to think about.
I guess there's an interesting implication in the werewolf, like the sort of day-night mirrors. So that's cool. Oh, I didn't think about it. If your opponent has already played a werewolf and then made it nighttime, my Brutal Cathar would just enter as a 3/3 ward and not exile one of their things. And so I'd be incentivized to try to make it daytime, possibly by losing some value. That didn't happen in my matches, but yeah, that's neat. I have a different opinion on day-night. I think it falls squarely into the, like, most of this ability is going to be standard and draft. Like, that's what we've seen for most of the werewolves. There's not like a ton of werewolves that seep into the older formats usually. There's a few and Commander for sure, but on Arena, this is fine. And it's just like a big flavor win, and like it looks pretty cool. And the game, obviously, the program keeps track of it for you, so there's not gonna be any mistakes. So on Arena, they changed it, but you don't have to worry about it. Just play your cards and have fun. But figuring out how to do it on paper, this weekend's the pre-release, and I'm not sure that I'm going to do any judging. I might be a Yellow Jacket for one event, but it's like, just if you're a new player, the fact that in Standard there's a bunch of but double-faced cards, like there's these modal double-faced cards, so you kind of know how those work. It's pretty straightforward, but you have to keep that straight between those, the transforming double-faced cards from this set, some of which have Daybound, Nightbound, and then also the Disturb cards. And so it just seems like a lot of juggling of the various kinds of double-faced cards. at the same time and like within the same set and trying to keep all that straight. And I think it's like it seems a little harsh for newer players. This PPR was a bit of a challenge to judge.
Yeah, even like the know-it-alls in chat were like, why isn't that card transformed? It was
right.
Like, because it does not have day or night bound.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I agree that I don't think it's actually great that you have cards with Daybound and Nightbound, and you have cards with Disturb, and you have other cards that just transform in other random ways.
Yeah, they just tell you, but they're not Daybound and they're not Disturb, and they still are Transform. Yeah.
I think that I quite like the play patterns, at least in Limited. I quite like the play patterns around Daybound and Nightbound. I kind of like doing sort of like, okay, well, if I don't cast a spell and I pass the turn, then it becomes night, and then my Olivia's Ambush does -13, and that'll be, then I can get that creature. But, the downside is that then this other thing will flip over, and, so like, I like that from a interesting gameplay decision tree aspect.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
But I definitely agree that I mean, during the PPR is when it sort of came up that I was like, wait, no, hang on. So my mirror, or the Ecstatic Awakener. Ecstatic Awakener showed up a lot, actually. It's a single black mana for a 1/1. And then for 2 and a black and sacrifice a creature, you can draw a card and then transform it. You can only do that once per turn. You can't activate it multiple times to sacrifice multiple creatures. And then it just turns into a 4/4. But it was sort of like, okay, now it's day. This doesn't, this stays put. This is still this 4/4 demon. And then there's this Disturb creature in the day. Yeah, like I agree. It was a lot to sort of keep track of.
It's a lot. And maybe it's not the Daybound Nightbound's fault. Maybe it's like, Jaren plus Enduring Angel plus, the pop-up book, like all the other transform cards that don't have Daybound, Nightbound, and aren't Disturb cards. Maybe they're the ones I'm supposed to be mad at, because it's like, okay, if I'm explaining to someone how to use their double face cards, it's like it could be this or it could be that, and maybe that would be just as good as not having Daybound, Nightbound. I mean, the old rule, right?
Yeah, I mean, I like that there is a big variety of interesting cards, and they're exploring a lot of cool design spaces. Obviously, that's never been a complaint of mine. However, I do agree that it probably would have been a lot less confusing, certainly for you and Serge judging at the PPR, if there was only cards if it was either there's werewolves with Daybound and Nightbound and cards with Disturb, or it was only werewolves and cards that transformed some other way, right? Like if it was just one fewer case for that whole thing would probably be better. And I know that like Disturbed is not even necessarily that difficult, because it's like, look, it's either on the battlefield transformed because you cast it for its Disturbed cost, or it's not. And then if it goes away, you exile it or whatever. But it does feel like there's a lot more going on. And yeah, like Cameron said, that, when people were watching it for the first time, it was like, well, hang on, why didn't that thing do anything?
My first impulse is that this is going to be confusing for new players. And that's really just kind of me covering for myself. No, it was confusing for me. Maybe new players would just be like, no, I have none of your preconceptions about what these cards do. And I have no expectations of them, and I completely parse Daybound, Nightbound as being separate from Insectile Aberration. Those are separate things, and I don't know why you would confuse the two. Maybe that's the new player experience. Yeah, no, I had a hard time keeping track of it, or at least not keeping track of it, but like having to continually remind myself. Right.
Yeah, I want to second that. It's like I also like to say, like, for a new player, or like me, having to judge and explain to someone, it's like, really, what am I talking about? I'm talking about me being responsible for the game as the judge or whatever, and like needing to stay on top of it the whole time, and having to remind myself how this all works and which card does what and cares about what. And like it's still like a lot of balls that are up in the air at the same time, and my brain's tired and I'm old, so maybe I should be just replacing the phrase new players with old tired players, and that's fine. The other thing I was going to mention is they made a new different modal double-faced card transform symbol, but like I get it, these cards aren't modal, you have to go through the steps, but it also seems a little bit incongruous that the non-Daybound, Nightbound transform double-faced cards from the set wouldn't have their own symbol too, or the Disturbed cards have their own symbol. And like maybe they tried that, maybe they mocked it up and it was even more confusing, so whatever. I bet they considered it, but I'm sure somewhere this weekend there's going to be a kid who just like plays, probably a grown old man or woman, whatever, like a person will play Mysterious Tome when it's Nightbound, and then the backside Chilling Chronicle will come in, because it seems to be that's how that works, right? So I have every sympathy for other judges and people trying to figure out how these cards work.
Speaking of which, I just noticed that Magic Online tweeted, owing to some sort of, I've been desperately Googling and trying to figure out what the actual problem was, but they tweeted 45 minutes ago, just as we began recording, actually, they tweeted, "We have temporarily removed Morbid Opportunist, Catilda, Dawnheart Prime, and Siphon Insight from Midnight Hunt boosters, and have banned Siphon Insight in all formats while we work on a fix."
Oh.
What could have happened on Magic Online?
While we're recording, my friend John Rickard texted me that there's a lot of refunds going out right now, because apparently if you get the game to transform into day in just the right way, then it skips your draw step. So these might be related problems, or they might not.
Yeah.
So, hey, it's not just me, and it's not just new players. It's Magic Online too. So I feel validated, Cameron. I hope you do.
Yeah, me as well. Yeah, if it confused Moto, then yeah.
Siphon Insight, by the way, is a rare for blue-black instant that says, look at the top 2 cards of target opponent's library, exile one of them face down and the other on the bottom, and put the other on the bottom of that library. You may look at and play the exiled card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell, and it has flashback for 1 blue-black. So I assume when they talk about that it's been banned in all formats until there's a fix, I guess I guess there was some horrible bug, but I don't know why they had to temporarily remove all those other cards from Midnight Hunt boosters.
I'm sure it's also bugs, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess I don't have to worry about Morbid Opportunities if I play in Magic Online.
There you go. At least your opponent won't double Phyrexian Arena you while also attacking you for 1 or whatever. That Siphon Insight's a pretty sweet card. I got it in my pre-release kit, but my blue-black deck was nowhere near as strong as my green-white deck, unfortunately. But this card's pretty rad. You get to sleight of hand your opponent, and then it has flashbacks, so you get to do it again. I mean, you pay a bit of mana, obviously. It's 2 and then 3 instead of 1 mana, but it's an instant. So I wouldn't be surprised if we're seeing this card constructed, once it's legal.
Yeah. Now I'm just imagining what could have gone wrong with this card.
Yeah, way over my head. It's just programming stuff, right?
Yeah.
It seems like it seems like casting Siphon Insight was just taking people's draw steps away.
Huh.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of a hammer blow. That's kind of
it's probably a bit of a problem. Yeah.
Your opponent skips their draw step is not text that appears on this card.
Yeah.
But maybe it should.
Magic Arena also recently fixed they had a big bug that was not affecting a huge number of people, but it was a huge problem for the people it did affect, which was anyone who had made it, not anyone, some number of people who had made it to Mythic in Limited. There was like it rolled over and had set them to like some very strange rank 0 where they couldn't play the game. They couldn't like
beginner account.
Yeah, they couldn't join queues. It's like, all right, you're so good, you've looped around the wraparound screen and now you're back at beginner.
Wow.
And
you hex overflowed your talent.
Yeah. And so they've now fixed that, and I believe, according to what I saw on Reddit just before recording, they've given those players like 10,000 gems, which ain't bad. So that's fixed at least.
Yeah, there also is like some free experience because wins didn't reset at the beginning. So if you haven't heard yet, you can enter a code.
Borrowed time for 4,000 experience. Yeah. Remember, also play mid. One word will get you 3 booster packs. Borrowed time will get you 4,000 experience. And there's a code for 6 packs in pre-release kits. If you have access to one of those.
If you don't have access to a pre-release kit, might I recommend heading on over to cardkingdom.com/LRR and letting them know that you want a pre-release kit, and also you want a great button because LRR sent you, and you no longer have to compare your board state to a mullet, and you can get an awesome button that says, "My name is Medium Gargadon." It's going to arrive quicker than you expected, and they'll be very pleasant to deal with, and they'll have all kinds of new cards for you. You can get sealed product from any set if you live in the United States, and you can get older sealed products if you live anywhere in the world, and you can get all kinds of singles anywhere in the world.
And the show is also brought to you by you and your kind support of our Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. That's it for Tap Tap Concede for this week, but we'll be back Whoa. You know what's happening is I haven't been playing enough Magic. That's what we're going to blame that on. Oh yeah, one more thing before we go. The Innistrad nicknames episode will be forthcoming at some point. The Innistrad Midnight Hunt nicknames, specifically this set. The Midnight Hunt nicknames will be forthcoming in the next some number of episodes. And if you want to submit your suggestion for the nicknames or to upvote other people's suggestions so that we can determine through the power of democracy the funniest joke or the strange reference that you enjoyed more than the other ones, head over to lrr.cc/nicknames. By the time you're hearing this on Monday, Paul should have that all up and ready to receive your comedy. So please do join in the fun. But that is everything for this week. I have been Graham, joined by Cameron and Nelson.
Thanks for listening.
James around the card reader. Jordan edits these. Heather gets them online. Thanks everybody for listening. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.